Housekeepers who worked in casino or hotels. What's the weirdest thing you walked into? A couple came to this luxury dude ranch I worked at and spent over $5,000 to stay there, only to not come out of their room the entire time. Went in to clean the room when they left and saw incredibly expensive unopened alcohol and boxes of sex toys around the room. On the bed, they left a note that said, "Enjoy." What? We threw out the toys. Who damn would use a used sex toy left by an unknown person? And got hammered that night. Story 2. I worked in a casino where I watched a middle-aged man literally shake a solid turd down his pant leg, sit back down, and continued on his machine. I turned around with backpack vacuum on and went to my lunch break. I didn't get paid enough to pick up strangers' crap. Story 3. Not me, but my friend from Ukraine worked at a crappy casino hotel in Wendover, Nevada, because they would sponsor his work visa. He wasn't a housekeeper, but would have to do maintenance in rooms. He said one day he went to a room where the people had already checked out and there was a chicken in the room, like a live chicken, just chilling there. Maybe the story is funnier when he tells it with his accent. Why is chicken in room? Story 4. I was a housekeeper at a dive of a hotel in Chico Cay in the late 90s AS. A week or so before a local homeless woman had stuck her arm in a tiger's cage, a circus that was traveling through town, and got mauled. That weekend, I was cleaning rooms and knocked on the door of a room paid for by a local charity organization. It turned out the guest was in the middle of hot time. Quickly realizing it wasn't a good time to clean the room, I said I would come back later. To my dismay, the woman opened the door and asked me to join her and her friend. I declined. She then reached out and grabbed me by the arm and tried to drag me in. Her arm was covered in bandages and lacerations. It was the woman who had been tiger mauled. I yanked my arm free and ran away. I'll never forget what her bandaged hand looked like. Story 5. Hotel worker. Had an American guy come into our hotel, meant to be staying for 3 days. Went into his room and never left the room in over 2 weeks. He kept phoning down to extend his stay. The strange thing was, he had the same routine every day. Around 8 a.m., he would order 8 bottles of beer and 20 cigarettes to be sent up to his room. He'd sign the check off to his room for the beers, but had to pay cash for the cigarettes as they came from the hotel shop, which wasn't owned by the hotel, therefore wasn't able to charge to the room. The cigarettes came to around 11 pounds, and he would always give us a 20 pounds note and told us to keep the change. Lunchtime rolls around, and again, 8 bottles of beer and 20 cigarettes. Come dinner time, again, another 8 beers, but 40 cigarettes this time, assuming to keep a stock of when the shop closed at nighttime. This happened every day he was staying with us. No one ever saw him leave the hotel, so assumed he had a stack of 20 pounds notes to pay for his cigarettes. He also instructed housekeeping not to clean his room. When he eventually left, the maid was greeted with hundreds of empty beer bottles. The bin was half full with cigarette ends and ash, and the room was left remarkably clean, albeit smelling awful. We tried to research the guy, but could only find he was part of an American broadcasting company. It was a long time ago and can't remember, so assumed he was over here to lie low. He checked out, paid off his bill, didn't even bother to check the bill, into a taxi and never to be seen again. Story 6. I worked for a hotel chain in Colorado, and one day my coworker and I went to strip a bed, and the bed was full of oranges. The dresser oranges. Side table, cans of mandarin oranges. Not exactly shocking or disgusting, but it was weird. Story 7. Worked at a casino hotel. Art Garfunkel was doing a concert at the casino and staying at our hotel. Yeah, Art Garfunkel definitely crap in bathtub. I had to clean it up. Story 8. Someone I know worked housekeeping at a casino. He walked in on a guy smearing crap over the walls with his bare hands. He was pissed that he lost money and thought he was justified to do it. Housekeeping called security. He was charged and banned. Story 9. This is related, but not exactly the question. When my wife and I were looking at wedding venues, one we went to was a hotel. The event manager wanted to take us up and show us the honeymoon suite. She opened the door, and there were 2 old men, like 60s, 70s, shirtless drinking vodka in the room. She was so extremely embarrassed and apologetic. She was very sweet too, but you could tell she was so mad at whoever screwed that up for her. We didn't choose the place, wasn't why, but I hadn't thought about that in a while and figured someone else may get a kick out of it. Story 10. I used to work in reservations in a big chain hotel in London. Housekeeping once told us there was one regular guest who used to always leave a single whole intact raw egg in the bed when they checked out. Nobody ever figured out why or where on earth they got that single raw egg in the middle of central London. Grocery stores aren't frequent in the area, and they certainly don't sell eggs one by one. Story 11. Worked housekeeping for a few weeks. Guess the weirdest crap was a 70-ish couple left their room, so I went to clean it. Big bottle and a sex toy so big even Ron Jeremy would have been jealous left out on the bed. Story 12. I worked as a concierge for an upscale hotel. So naturally, because there wasn't a line for my desk, I fielded complaints regularly. One day a woman, very nice and patient, rare, calmly explained to me that her 5-year-old opened the door to their bathroom and there was a housekeeper pooping in there. The housekeeper and the boy screamed so loudly that I had already gotten noise complaints from the adjacent rooms. Needless to say, that family got a free night and an upgrade. Story 13. We had a hotel room one time and checked in around 4-ish. Can't remember what hotel it was. When we walked in, one of the housekeepers was asleep in the chair, apparently had taken a rest and checked out for who knows how long. We woke her up when we came in the room. She was very apologetic and took her cart and stuff with her right away. We never said anything to the staff or saw her again. The room was all clean and set up, so nothing to complain about. Story 14. I walked in on a couple sleeping on the bathroom floor of a hotel room in the hotel I work for. The bed was untouched, and everything was normal with that one exception. Story 15. Not my story, but a friend was a maid at a cheap hotel in our university town. She has a bunch of gross and weird stories, but the most insane is when she came into work and found a full abandoned Met lab in the bathroom of one of the rooms. Her manager made her clean up a bunch of trash from the different ingredients and scrub chemical stains that must have been left by spills. Apparently, the room smelled like a bad science experiment, or just normal Met, and the management refused to get any police involved. I imagine they believed it would discourage their regular clientele. I believe she quit very soon after. Story 16. Had a teacher who was the manager of a Marriott in Germany for a while. She has wild stories. Once found an anaconda in the bathroom, wrapped around the shower curtain pole. Pulled devil worshippers out of the pool at 3 a.m. when the pool closed and they refused to get out. They weren't even guests. Saw the janitor with a wheelbarrow, a hose, and a shovel. He went somewhere, went to lunch, and came back. After his lunch, she followed him and asked what was up. He didn't speak good German and just said, "Cleaning up, African lady leg." Turned out some lady had jumped from the top floor of one side of the building. Hotel was kind of like an L shape, one side higher than the other. Hit the emergency ladder on the way down, and she landed badly and ended up losing both her legs. Story 17. Oh, I got one. I was a night auditor, though. This one starts out benign enough. My day shift starts, and I have a small line. It's Saturday, and we're near a couple of casinos. Not unusual. A very polite man checks in and rents a top-level suite for him and his wife. I get him in and start checking in the next couple. Being distracted, I barely noticed the previous couple come back in, only that the wife was partially obscured by the luggage cart, and I remember thinking to myself, that's an ugly woman. The night is quiet, and I leave. I come in the next night to hear what unfolded after I left. The couple never came back down to check out and have not been seen since. When housekeeping entered the room, they immediately alert the FDM. Every surface of the room is covered in lube. The bed, the couch, the jacuzzi, even the mini fridge is covered in bottles and bottle of lube. We know for sure it's lube because a dozen bottles are left in the tub. But wait, there's more. In addition to the lube, there is a rather large sex toy left behind with thick black scuff marks and cracked down the center. My FDM, in her infinite wisdom, decides that they must have been addicts, and this sex toy is where they are hiding their needles. She decides to pick it up to open it, safety reasons. But when she does, all that falls out is a rather impressive motor that has been burned out. The icing on this cake comes when they review the security tape. The wife is clearly a man in a wig. It's a big burly dude wearing a cheap wig. Story 18 was on a youth trip with my church. Guys stayed in one room, girls stayed in the other. All us bored kids start looking around the room, because kids, and we found a nug of weed under the bed. Super big fine for a couple of church kids. We go to tell the girls what we found, and they go on to tell us they did the same thing and found blood all over the wall. Story 19. 10 plus years in hotels. Duffel bag with $10,000 in cash. The security guard who found it returned it. Once we had a guess that was the focus of a counterfeit investigation. How did we know this? The agents who were investigating rented a room near theirs and told us. Why TF they thought that would be a good idea when hotel workers are gossipy little craps, I don't know. Somehow it must have worked because the arrests were made a few days later. Worked in a hotel that allowed pets with a small deposit, so the number of animals was unreal. The dogs, cats were fine, but what got my goat was the folk that tried to avoid paying the fee and pretended they didn't have an animal. Okay, whatever. You don't like spending money any more than the next dude, but the problems arose when we needed to get into the room, maintenance, cleaning, and had zero idea to expect an animal. Almost everyone who worked there had a story of being bitten by a dog at some point. On the further subject of unexpected denizens from the kingdom Animalia, we also encountered bears, young cub, alligator, 3 feet plus in the tub, a capuchin monkey, damn mean, a box of chicks. Apparently, this is how they are mailed, in a damn cardboard box. Oh man, the noise, etc. These were actually all from one particular guest who worked in the TV industry. The worst part about it was that cleaning his room was a crapshoot. He'd swear blind he wouldn't have animals in the room, and then boom, alligator. So of course, the poor housekeeper go out of there. And then dude would get home at 10-11 p.m. and scream at us about his room not being cleaned. We'd explain that we don't clean rooms with loose wildlife, and he would categorically deny that there were any animals in his room. Point blank, over and over, even if we had pics. It was damn bizarre. Also disturbing was the trend of people abandoning animals. Dogs, cats, and once a damn blue macaw. Like, what the heck, dude? Getting away from animals, it was also pretty common to find guns. I was working in operations in this hotel around the time of Sandy Hook, and we found several. Our working theory was that people felt unsafe and started carrying, but they weren't used to it and inclined to forget them. We generally would give it a few hours, then turn them into the cops if no one called to reclaim it. Once we found a gun that was so damn old it was basically rust and dirt. That one freaked us out badly enough that instead of waiting for the officer that worked our overnight security to swing by that evening, we called to have someone pick it up. None of us knew much about firearms. Our fear was that if it even had bullets, there was the risk that it could. I honestly don't know. Do guns explode? I have no idea, but I also don't know why anyone would have carried it around. I doubt it could have fired. Depending on the hotel, sex toys are so common we don't think about them, just trash them. Honorable mentions, fake IDS, not for underage drinking, dude was older. All kinds of substances, paraphernalia, unexpected dead people, oh, and the cat hoarder that had 14 cats in a small 300 square feet room with no litter boxes. Hotel had to hire a biohazard team to take the room apart when that guest was evicted. They did it in full hazmat suits. Story 20. Not me, but my husband used to manage a hotel in our town. Our town is very industrial in Alberta. That gave the town away right there. So when oil was high, all the hotels were full of drillers and rig pigs and frack boys. So one morning, the housekeepers were cleaning a room and saw a 10 inches thick sex toy with ribbed edges. Metal, I believe they thought it was. Of course, no one touched it to confirm. Left it where it was and finished cleaning the room. Older, tough-looking guy was renting the room. No one said anything, and he didn't say anything either. This was about 10 years ago. Story 21. I was an it guy for a casino. Got a call that a guest couldn't get his device connected to the Wi-Fi, so I had to go up and give him a hand. Come to get his tablet connected. He's in the room. Older guy, 60 plus, wearing a pair of gold booty shorts. He's got 3 girls. I'd meant they had to be 21, but they weren't much more than that, in there with him. Thongs and fuzzy high-heeled slippers. Topless, shameless. They want to connect the iPad so he can play some video to go along with the game they're playing. Couple bags of toys and tubes of stuff scattered all around the room. 2 of the girls were getting impatient and already playing with each other by the time I got there. I've got my own kinks, so who am I to judge? Got his stuff connected, and they were able to get his movie and got it playing on the TV in the room. He tipped me a small baggie of Molly and a couple $100, all in $50. I took the money and let him keep the substances. Find out later he was a VIP card member and typically dropped $20 grand or so on the tables. Story 22. My grandfather used to work at a posh resort where many celebrities checked in. He told us that Bill Cosby always trashed the room and left behind a huge mess with no tip for the housekeepers. This was back when Cosby was viewed as America's dad. Now it doesn't seem strange at all. Story 23. I don't know about them, but I was working on a job in a shady part of Yakima called Yakima. We were working 12, 14-hour days. I just left my gun in the drawer and I'm not a cluttery person, so I just empty my pockets into the nightstand drawer every night. One day I left my gun, a roll of duct tape, some big zip ties, and a knife in the drawer. When I came back, room was clean and the drawer was organized nicer. After that, the housekeeping lady would scuttle away upon my visage. Story 24. I stayed at a hotel that hosted a Magic: The Gathering tournament. Was visiting Atlantic City. Only realized what it was as I played Magic a decade ago. In the morning as I was leaving, a housekeeper had a room opening and cleaning. He stops me and says, "What the heck is this? Is it worth money?" I look in and someone has filled the bathtub nearly to the brim with Land's Commons. Story 25. I used to work on a military base as a housekeeper. I was there for about a month and a half. One time someone checked out early, so I had a room added to my list. Knocked, went in, and there was blood everywhere. I immediately called down to the front. I need help now. I was new. I was not prepared for this. It was everywhere. It had soaked down through the duvet, layers of sheets to the mattress. There were bloody handprints everywhere. On the mirrors, on the headboards, on the back of doors, showers, carpet, the kitchenette, in every crack and crevasse of the bathroom, on the shower head, everywhere. Someone had decided to have a finger painting session during that time of the month with their boyfriend. It turns out some brass's daughter had got a room while visiting dear old dad and had her Tinder date over. Daughter had enough foresight to tell her parents that she was on her period and may have bled through the bedding, but she was scared and didn't know what to do. When we said her date was accountable too, she claimed that she 100% didn't have someone else in the room with her. It was $1,800 to clean up that mess and replace everything. And Dad was losing his mind over it, yelling and screaming the whole time. They kept saying there was no way that it should cost so much, calling us liars. After sitting in and listening calmly after being screamed at, my boss slid over the pictures to him. From that point on, you could hear a pin drop. He got out his checkbook, wrote the check, and quietly left. Story 26. My mother was once a housekeeper at a Harrah's casino hotel. She opened up a room and a terrible smell hit her. Apparently, a handicapped man staying at the hotel was waiting for his help to show up, but they never did, and his crap had overflowed its container and his phone was dead and he couldn't move. She went to go find help and left that day and never came back. Story 27. I can answer this one. Worked at a huge water park resort. I was doing a late shift at a time of year when the resort was almost empty. So tired of knocking on all the doors, I just barged into the rooms. To clarify, I always knocked, but I was getting tired after 20 or so rooms without a guest. Come to this room in the 4th floor. I walk in, and there's an old, heavy guy feasting on a bucket of fried chicken. Lights off, in front of the TV. He stared at me for a couple of seconds, and I apologized before he could say anything. Left the room immediately. I later found out that room was supposed to be vacant. I have no idea where he came from, why he was there, or how he got there. Story 28. Wasn't a housekeeper, but worked as front desk for night shift in a small 20 rooms hotel plus restaurant. We have a regular customer who used to arrive at 4 a.m., always ringing before arriving because he demanded help from the staff for his luggage and asked everyone to call him doctor. One night he asked me to take out the TV out of his room. I offered him a TV-less room, but he insisted on just removing the TV. On another time, he arrived alone, as usual, and stayed for 3 or 4 nights. Last night he filed a complaint about someone from the staff sneaking into his room, drugging him, and sleeping with his wife. Dude implied there had been sexual intercourse. The weird part is that he arrived alone, and that night it was the only customer in the whole place. It was only him, the guy working as handyman who was in the restaurant at the time, and me. No one saw him go in or out with anyone. When he left his room, alone, at 4 a.m. I entered to see if everything was in order. He had put the sheets in the tub and were soaking wet. He ripped the pillowcases and tried to flush them in the toilet. There was a lot of red yarn in the floor. No signs of no one else. It bugged me to this day, because I don't know if he was psychotic or what. Other time, one of the housekeeping ladies called me because there was a bed that looked as if Jack had killed someone and were covered in red. Really strange. Story 29. I'm late to this because I'm working overnight at a hotel tonight, and I just woke up. I've been a hotel manager for about 5 years. A year of that was spent in housekeeping. And the worst was a chick who had overdosed on something and smeared crap literally all over herself in the bathroom. Smell was indescribable. There were sex toys and syringes everywhere too. Her boyfriend tried to call us and say she had just forgotten to take her insulin that night. I think I showered like 10 times after work that day. Most recently, the weirdest thing we found was a cat. Some idiot had left a cat in his room and trashed it. The cat had no food, no water, and no litter box, but was the sweetest little dude ever. The owner called back and tried to get his cat, and we lied and said we'd turned him over to animal services. He's happily living with another manager now. Another time, another manager and I were inspecting rooms, and she radioed me to say there was a brown smudge on a pillow, and she wasn't sure if it was crap or chocolate. She asked me if she should touch it, and I said yes, like in a hole. It was crap. Story 30. Not a housekeeper, but I was a bartender at a Marriott hotel years ago. Along with regular bartending duties, I also delivered bar orders as part of room service. One night, I received a typical order, wine, beer, from a room that called down to the bar. I brought the drinks to the room and was greeted by an early 50s man wearing a white robe. He greeted me and asked me to place the drinks on a dresser fairly close to door. As I went to place the drinks down, I noticed the bed had between 13 sex toys laid out neatly along the foot of the bed. The sizes ranged from normal to horse. They were evenly spaced and all facing towards the headboard. While he was signing, I made my way to the door, and as soon as he handed me the book, I smiled and said, "Thank you, have a great night." He just smiled, and that was it. 0% acknowledgement on his end. Story 31. So, I've been in the hotel hospitality industry for 4 years or so now. Bartender/server/valet, occasionally helping out housekeeping if they needed a hand with small stuff. Side note, be kind to the housekeepers. Hardest working people in a hotel. I also ran a lot of room service. I worked at a small boutique hotel that catered to wannabe 1%ers and, on occasion, the real deal, $5K dinner. Most expensive bottles of wine we carried types. It was also a child-free hotel. We saw some weird crap on occasional. A lot of couples that obviously were with people not their significant other. How would we know? Cash everything. Making sure they always had sunglasses on when near cameras. Wedding band marks where a ring had recently been. Obviously, not all of these people were cheating. But as the hotel had a strict NDA agreement with staff, it wasn't like we were going to say anything. Tons, and I mean tons, of swingers. People thought anything goes in a child-free hotel. which they interpreted correctly as adults only, but not that kind of adult only. Bad brides, brides' moms, grooms' moms. Honestly, looking back, the groom's mothers were a bigger pain in my ass. One lady offered to blow me in the bathroom if I would give her a key to our liquor shelf once the bar closed. I declined graciously. One poor gentleman had purchased a case of champagne and prepared to propose to his girlfriend. She bailed on the trip and ended the relationship. I took him breakfast on his last day, and the room was covered in broken bottles of cham, bottles of lube, and dirty napkins. Substances. So many substances. So many attempts to get me to go out and score them substances. I never did, but I know some of the staff took the money and got what the guests needed. The hotel was located in the back of a very large gated community, and the cops had an understanding that unless there was a murder, they would stay away. When I helped with valet, I saw some really neat cars, and also some of the most disgusting cars I had ever seen, like a gorgeous BMW that was absolutely filled with old cig butts, empty liquor bottles, and more than one sex toy. One dude insisted that his car be moved so that it was never sitting in the sun, so every hour, the valets would have to move it to a newer, shady spot. The guests tipped well, but it was a pain, and he checked. Naked old people roaming the halls, constantly. Naked people not wanting to put on clothes when they ordered room service. Saw a lady very well tied down, and the man in not but a leather banana hammock. Held the door wide open for me, and made very sure I could see everything. One gentleman used a bungalow as a personal powder room. Booked it for the weekend. Checked out with the night desk. When we went down to the room, there was dog crap and powder residue everywhere. Had to call the cops on that one as the guy had broken every single mirror and the damage was high enough to be severe property damage on the whole. It was a lovely experience and the first time I ever made real money in my life. I don't regret a thing, except for not hooking up with some of the bridesmaids. Story 32. One particularly bad and odd time still sticks with me to this day. I was working at a casino as a summer job. It was relatively small and in a rural sort of area with small towns all around it that sought it out as their primary source for entertainment. I picked up the housekeeping gig just because it seemed easy and I didn't have to do customer service. Most rooms weren't anything special, beer cans, cigarette butts, and maybe random miscellaneous trash. Not too much to do, usually in and out from room to room, and occasionally we would get rooms that were seemingly unused. This room seemed very well kept. No smells, nothing immediately visible that needed cleaning, and the bed was made. Another easy refill job. Let's just make sure to take the sheets like we usually do, because regardless of use, we have to assume they were used even though this bed was made particularly well and was very neat. As I rounded the corner to start on the left side towards the darker corner of the room where no light was fast, I heard a smidge and felt a soft impact on the heel of my shoe. I asked the person who was supervising me to turn the light on before we continued with the bed. To my dismay, I had stepped in a massive entity of a turd, easily the size of my shoe itself, but not curled, just one big old line of crap. I clean it up and then have to bag my shoe for cleaning and wear a clean slipper that was on hand. Turning to the bed, I feel a sinking feeling having fell into one trap and wondered what horror awaited me between the layers of these sheets. The top blanket was wrapped tight, like really tight. As soon as we pull it back, there was a rather warm draft accompanied by such an intense smell that we both immediately gagged. We continued further in, and somehow this person had crap in between every single layer of sheets, dead center on each one, without making much of a mess. Outside of those parts, just a stack of crap not too far off in appearance from pancakes. We got the bed wheeled out and bagged the sheets. Surprisingly, the other bed did not have this same prank, so we didn't have to get rid of it, but did so anyways. The shock factor of that wore off as we worked on the room for the next 15 or so minutes and cleaned the carpet, giving it a thorough steaming and scrubbing all around. I realized that we forgot the bathroom. As soon as I opened that bathroom, I was met with the strangest, stalest smell of BO and something very sour. This damn bathroom was covered in body hair, long and short from floor to ceiling, but not on the chrome of the sink or the mirror. God knows why this person put this much into this, and who knows what mental state they left in, but 1 hour later, that entire room was clean, and I left realizing this crap wasn't for me. And things were getting just a little too hairy for my taste, and I quit the next day. I had seen guns and money and sex toys a bunch by that point, but for some reason that just got to me. Story 33. Not a maid, but a hotel guest put on the "Do Not Disturb" sign. Maid decides to enter anyway, while I'm balls deep in my girlfriend. It was quite the mood killer, especially since the maid insisted in cleaning our room because she was here anyway. Story 34. Worked a summer job at hotel near Cedar Point back in the early 90s. Went to a room to see if the guest had left without checking out. She checked out all right. Shot herself in the head on the patio. Room was on the 3rd floor. Her blood dripped down 3 floors between the deck slats. Had to keep 3 rooms closed for days afterwards. Lots of power washing and bleach. Almost as bad as the fella who slipped running on the treadmill and caught his twig and berries between the roller and belt. Story 35. I was at random party taking place in a suite, and I go into the bathroom and see a guy in the bathtub with an entire rotisserie chicken. He looks up at me and sticks out a greasy finger as he finishes chewing and then says, "Don't mind me." Story 36. One time I walked into a room and it was completely covered in red stains. Absolutely everywhere you could see. On the beds, the carpets, the floors, the walls, all over the bathroom, and even a bit on the ceiling. No idea how they managed to do that. At first I thought it may be blood, but then I noticed it reeked of alcohol. They spilled red wine absolutely everywhere. The room had to be shut down and they had to bring up the shampoo machines. I think they may have had to repaint too. Bonus story. That very same day, I walked into a room that was very heavily smoked in. The smell was so extremely bad that I couldn't breathe at all. My manager said that it takes at least 5 people chain smoking for at least 12 hours straight to make a room smell as bad as that one did. That also required a machine, and they had to replace the mattresses and curtains. Smoking was not allowed anywhere in the hotel. Story 37. Oh, pick me. So, I was doing one of my first few overnight desk shifts at a hotel. It had been a fairly quiet night until this point. I go into the server room behind the desk and there's water pouring from the ceiling, like literally just pouring out over all of the computers. So I call my on-duty security guard and my management team, who tells me to have my security guard go to every room above the server room until they figured out where the water was coming from. He finally figured it out around 6 floors up. So he gets to the room and sees water spilling out from under the door, so he knocks, no answer. Repeats this a couple times. Deadbolt was locked, so the master key was useless. He finally gets in. Maintenance came up with the deadbolt key thing. And this dude is laying on the bed, stark, naked spread eagle. And this was a big dude. And there's a lady of the night, also naked, passed out in the shower with it on full blast, and her ass over the drain. She flooded 6 floors of rooms, 1 room per floor, all the way down to the server room. Story 38. I was working through a temp agency for motel number 6. So one of the other workers had a room to clean. The occupants were supposed to be gone. So the worker goes into the room, and there's a man tied up in the bed with some type of BDSM outfit on. He was gagged also. She didn't even help him. She just called the cops. He was fine. It was a kink of his, but the other person just left him tied up and took all his things. Story 39. Not what I walked into, but the aftermath: 2 very business-looking men, clean-cut, amazing manners, 5-star reserves, high-class hotel, stayed for a week, D and sign indoor, left garbage and dirty towels outside door, walk in. Oh man. First I see a puddle of blood in the hall. Turn left into bathroom and human feces all over the place. Yes, even the ceiling. Freak out. Think someone was murdered. Investigate deeper. Used condoms tied to the lampshades. Feces all in the beds, on the walls, headboards, desk, you name it. Condoms galore. Must have been $200 worth of them. Dirty, bottles and toys, if you know what I mean. Freaking terrifying. Hazmat came in to save the day. Got a $100 tip. I can't put into words everything I saw that day, but imagine. Story 40. On the flip side of this, I go to kinky parties in hotels. Like, we rent out whole hotels, and the staff knows. Most people try and do a good job putting away toys before the housekeepers come in. I went down to the pool with a few friends, and then we came back to her room. She put the do not disturb thing in the door, but in Vegas, or at least the hotel we were staying in, they do wellness checks on the 3rd day. They made the bed, cleaned the bathroom, put her various stuffed animals on the bed, her diapers on the table, and her putt plugs lined up on the nightstand. We felt super bad for the staff. As a rule of the party, people are supposed to be respectful of the staff. Don't put the staff in any awkward situation, that kind of stuff. It was an honest mistake. It wasn't my room, but I wish they would have just turned around and left. No one got in trouble with the people hosting the event or the hotel, but it is one of those things where we are trying to be as polite as possible because we are all nice people and not many hotels will let us do this. Story 41. In Sudbury, Ontario, my mom used to work as head of housekeeping at 3 different locations back in the 90s, all owned by the same family. However, this story involves the bigger of the 3 hotels and the motel next to it, both owned by same family. A man had rented room 101 for a single night. The morning of his checkout, mom was called to that particular room by housekeeping. She walked in to find crap, yes, human feces, smeared all over the walls and furniture. She and housekeeping had to clean everything up themselves and had to leave all the windows open in order to air out the room. Everything would have been fine if it hadn't been middle of winter. Because the windows had to be left open, the pipes froze and burst beneath that particular room. Everything would have been fine if it hadn't been directly over the power room. Power had to be cut off in the hotel because water was pouring into the power room from the ceiling. So that was weird. Mom was pretty upset and told management never to rent to that man again. Everything would have been fine if, a few months after that, we're now in middle of summer. Weather is nice and business is good. A man rents a room for a single night at the motel next door. The morning of his checkout, mom was called to that particular room by housekeeping. She walked in to find the mattresses up against the wall, a chair in the center of the room with a giant, gutted pumpkin sitting on said chair. What had been, presumably, the innards of said pumpkin had been smeared all over the walls, furniture, and inside the bathroom, some of which dumped into the bathtub. Mom and housekeeping cleaned up, and she had another chat with management. Apparently, there was some miscommunication in upper management about the first incident. The motel management didn't get the memo and rented a room to the same man from the first time at the hotel. Mom was not happy. Story 42. In the 80s, my aunt was a maid at a hotel, but was on holiday when this happened. She was Polish, didn't really speak English, and she just made enough money to travel with her husband and friends to Vegas for a vacation. As the night went on in the casino, she decided to go to bed. As she took the elevator, it stopped one floor up, and two huge black dudes in suits walked in. I mean, like ceiling high. And a short black man came in with them, smiling at my aunt. They pushed the penthouse button. As my aunt was, well, scared of black people back then, especially the two huge dudes and a grinning stranger, she started panicking, talking to them in Polish not to hurt her, and giving them her watch. The men were obviously really confused, but the short one couldn't stop laughing. As the elevator stopped on her floor, she ran to her room, glancing back at the elevator. She noticed the men were checking which room she was in. Of course, she panicked, didn't sleep all night, kept talking to her husband how she almost got kidnapped or whatever, but nothing happened all night. In the morning, someone knocked on the door. As they opened, a hotel employee said they got a gift from someone. It was a huge bouquet of roses. In each rose was a $100 bill and a card saying, "To the crazy lady from the elevator. Thanks for the watch. Eddie Murphy, true story." Story 43. I lived in Mississippi, where you got thrown in jail for having weed on you. At the hotel where I worked, a lady came up to me and asked if I knew where she could get this one. I had to admire her boldness. Of course, I don't do substances harder than ibuprofen, and at the time, didn't know what cannabis even looked like. While I pondered her question, I remembered a guy who worked at the hotel with me of whom I had my suspicions. I told her to go to the laundry room and ask for Craig. Don't say my name or how you know his. Craig might be able to help you. 5 minutes later, I see them talking. Craig walks off to his car, comes back, and makes the exchange. I was shocked because I only had my suspicions that he was a weed head. Huh? I'm not trying to knock him, I just think it was funny that he had this on him, enough to sell to that chick. Story 44. Worked as a valet bellhop at a casino. I have a horror story for you. So this guy pulls up in his truck, handicapped older man, needs some help getting his mobility Scott out of the back. He kind of smelled a bit, and his truck was messy as can be, but I'm not here to judge. He's a paying customer. So of course, I help him. End problem. I always helped as much as I could because the better service I provided, the more I got tipped. He has me load up his luggage and park his truck. He's in the casino at this point. I get into the truck and realize the smell is much worse at this point. The truck looked dirty, but inside it was a nightmare from an episode of Hoarders. I roll down all the windows and decide, screw it. This dude better be tipping me well. This is terrible. But again, who am I to judge? At this point, I was in the truck maybe 30 seconds when I put it in drive, start to pull forward, and realize my legs feel wet. This dude peed himself and I was sitting in his liquid. The truck got put in park. I called security and told them to move it because I refused to touch it. Went into my supervisor's office and said something along the lines of, AJ, I just sat in a guy's literal piss. I'm either going home or I quit. Fortunately, he was a super cool dude. He let me leave and had them reimburse me, too much, for my pants. Came back the next day and AJ showed me pictures of the room where this man had pooped all over. On the bed, the floor, the counter, and the bathtub. Like a diarrhea explosion in every area of this poor 100 square foot room. It was horrific. Long story short, the guest got charged something like $2,500, was required to put down a $5,000 deposit each time he came after that. He came back all the time. And I got $100 and like 2 hours of paid vacation. Story 45. When doing my industry placement as the final leg of my hospitality course, I worked in the HK department of a 5-star hotel. Arrived at a joined room for a family of 4. Nothing spectacular. Walked into the parents' side of the room, spotless. Even the bed was made impressed. Walked into the adjoining room and saw what the messiest room was one could ever imagine. The place looked like a bomb had gone off in it. Clothes were strewn across every surface, chocolate stain on the walls. Yes, it was actual pillow chocolate. The bedding was found in the bathroom. Clothes were even hanging from the damn lights. Anyway, what was weird was as I got to cleaning the mess, I started to notice that the clothes strewn across the room weren't clothes per se, but rather an incredibly eclectic mix of the most insane lingerie one could imagine. Teddies, garter belts, leather-strapped things that looked almost too complicated to actually wear. The works. Not one to flinch and eager to impress in my first week, I just went about and cleaned it all. Folded what could be folded, packed it all into the cupboards, left the room spotless, did my final checks, and turned to leave. As I opened the door to the hallway who was there to greet me, but the mom and dad and their daughters, two 14/15-year-old kids. My jaw must have hit the floor when I realized that all that crap must have belonged to the kids. The father caught my eye, shrugged as if to say, "What can you do?" and then moved to allow me to leave. I still don't quite know. Story 46. Not a housekeeper, but worked for a huge hotel. I'll leave out some details to stay anonymous. The most memorable was we had a guy get locked out of his room naked one night. He desperately tried to get back in his room and snapped the handle right off the door. He waited a few minutes for help to walk by, but nobody came by, so he was then forced to take a 10-plus story ride down to the front desk, holding a hand over his junk to beg for help. It was late night, but a super busy weekend, and he ran across quite a few people on the way there. We gave him a towel and hid him in a closet while we fixed the door. Couldn't just give him another room because it was a sold-out night. It was all on video and we weren't supposed to share it, but of course we all did. We laughed at his expense for a long time. How do you mistake the bathroom door for the front door of your room? Watching the part of him ripping that handle off and the look of desperation was just too funny to not laugh at. Another crazy incident was a triple shooting in a really nice suite. Drunk guy shot several people and they all fled out into the hallway. It was pure chaos because this is a nice hotel and we had pools of red liquid in the hallway and on the walls and elevators. There were bullet holes everywhere going through walls and doors into the hallway. Then we had to move the entire floor so they could dispose of the bloody stuff. It was pretty surreal talking to the next door room with a family and leading their kids past so much liquid you could smell it from several feet away. They were all pretty understanding about the situation. It was just one of those random acts of violence that nobody could ever predict. Story 47. I was a bellman at a Holiday Inn and was asked to deliver drinks to a guy who was paralyzed from the waist down because he was being inappropriate verbally to the restaurant waitresses. He ordered 2 martinis and 2 double screwdrivers, round 4. I walked into a disaster. Enormous mess. Crap everywhere and chew spit all over everything, including his face. The toilet was covered in crap, of which I told no one for fear they would ask me to clean it up. As I'm about to walk out, he asks me if I want to make $50. Nothing sexual, so he said. I said sure because I'm a high school student and $50 would be awesome. I trust that he wants nothing sexual, and luckily all he asked was for me to go in his van and get him some clean clothes. He was clearly living in this van. The whole thing was full of clothes and crap scattered everywhere. I brought him back the clothes and he actually gave me $50. I came back to work the next day and it turns out he wanted waffles at like 2 a.m. and cussed them out so bad when they said no that they finally kicked him out. A tow truck shows up to pull his van to wherever. Remember, he's paralyzed. From what I was told, this idiot wheeled his chair to the tow truck, stands up, and climbs into the passenger seat. Turns out he just divorced his wife and was traveling around the area getting all ducked up and being ridiculous at various hotels. Best of luck to you, sir, and thanks for the $50. Story 48. On the flip side, I was trying to get into my room when I arrived to a hotel late at night by myself. My key wouldn't work, so I was confused and trying it multiple times. After a minute or two, I'm calling the lobby, and a housekeeper comes out of the room with a guy. I'm kind of stunned and confused and say sorry while I'm also on the phone, and they're both slinking away without saying anything, like dogs caught rummaging through the garbage. I was confused, then amused then annoyed at the inconvenience of getting another room. Funny story now, though. Story 49. I took a job for my best friend's father, who was a real estate developer who liked to buy places on the cheap. I was 18, and he offered to give me a summer job at this boutique hotel on the beach in the beautiful redneck Riviera known as Panama City Beach. The place was a real crap hole. Basically, I was cleaning rooms all day, which sucked, and because it was so cheap, we attracted a certain clientele. Cousin Eddie comes to mind. I was living on the beach rent-free, so it was cool for a 19-year-old. July 4th is the busy day for the summer. The place was sold out. No fun to be had, though, as a monsoon had come in and it was pouring the entire weekend. I get a call around 3 that the plumbing was broken. Then came another and another. I run over and walk into the first room. The shower in room had filled up with about 6 inches of brownish-black smelly gunk. It turns out the cheap skate owner, my friend's dad, had not cleaned the septic tanks. The heavy rains had caused them to saturate, and the contents had to go somewhere. Later learned they weren't even legal at that point and were supposed to be removed, but he had been pudding of the issue. Every shower in every room had filled up with 6 inches of human crap. I was used to cleaning up some nasty crap. Puking and used condoms were the norm. This guy looked at me and said, "Y'all gonna clean this up?" I looked at him and said, "Nope." I quit right then. Never worked in a hotel again. Never will. Story 50. I will never forget this one room I had to clean as a housekeeper. It was one of my first jobs. I was 16. We were given 30 minutes max per room, and I walked in and immediately radioed my manager, letting her know I would need longer. The stench smacked me in the face immediately. B.O. and meat. The tan carpet and all of the sheets were stained with deep red BBQ sauce, and there were over 40 rib bones everywhere. There was a tripod left on its side in the corner of the room and handcuffs on the floor lamp, which they obviously lost the key to. because they tried to break the base of the lamp to get them off. I almost cried, trying to get the damn BBQ sauce out of the carpet. The manager sent 2 women up to help me when she saw what I was dealing with. I only assume a cheaply made food adult film was filmed the night before. Story 51. My friend found a batleth under a hotel bed. He called dibs on it because anything in Lost and Found was thrown out after 2 weeks. The guy called 10 days later and paid to have it shipped back to him out of state. Bummer. Story 52. My mom worked at a hotel. She walked into a weird but cool, sad situation. The hotel had a local alley cat, Orange Tabby, we called Tom. Tom would let himself into any room and stay the night, but one time no one would let him in. So he found a truck with an open window and climbed in. Next day, Guy checks out and drives 100 miles to another town and discovers the cat behind the seat just laying there purring. The guy drove 100 miles back to return the cat. Cat lived like a king for another 2 years until someone finally adopted it and gave it a permanent home. Tom wasn't into that and tried to make it back to the hotel 3 miles away. Halfway back, he stopped at the city pool. Kids got him wet and he freaked out, ran into traffic and got hit. People who knew the cat pitched in cash. Cat got the surgery, survived, and then 2 months later, he duck and crossed town again and made it to the hotel, checked into a room, curled up on a bed, and passed away. Broke my mom's heart. She quit a week after that because she was the last one to pet the cat and couldn't bear changing the room he passed in. She said every time she went in there, she swore when her back was turned to the bed, she could hear him purring like he always did as he followed her from room to room. Story 53. I was once walking down the hall past a wide open door. I glanced inside and saw a fully nude man, fortunately facing away from me. I'm not sure he realized that door was open. Another time, I went into a room that looked pretty normal for a checkout. Lots of wine glasses, but whatever. Then I went on to the attached balcony. I saw the splattered puddles of bright magenta vomit first. Then I noticed the bits of feces spread around. Then I looked up and saw a pair of utterly destroyed, crap-stained underwear with a cute little cactus print in a tree nearby. Not something I actually saw in person, but I heard the stories and saw the photographic evidence. One of our housekeepers walked into a room and found the TV, coffee maker, and clock unplugged and in the bathtub. In the room itself, the 2 beds had been pushed aside to make room for several animal skins laid out around the crystal. It was actually a couple of different pieces of crystal put together in a vaguely phallic shape. The poor housekeeper just noped out of the room and found someone else to deal with it. Turns out that the room was being used by a very nice group of Australians who were apologetic when they realized they forgot to put up a "Do Not Disturb" sign. I did hear one of them the next day talking on the phone and saying, "Yeah, it's just not absorbing the love energy." I hope they got that sorted out. Story 54. In the late 90s, I had a roommate who managed a hotel in Manhattan. He came home one night and told me they found a 3-foot nitrous tank in one of the rooms. They disposed of it personally. These days, they would probably call the bomb squad. Story 55. So this didn't happen to me, but my mother-in-law, who speaks Spanish only, was working in Las Vegas and found a chocolate bar unopened in a room she was cleaning. She didn't think anything of it, and while she was cleaning her dozen rooms that day, she was slowly nibbling away at this chocolate bar. Well, about 30 to 45 minutes later, we got a call from one of her friends at the casino that she worked with saying that she was dizzy and stopped talking and only would stare at the ground. She's in her mid-50s, so her family thought that it was a possible health problem and was very worried and rushed her to the hospital. When I found out that she ate the chocolate bar, I started laughing hysterically and told my wife that she ate a marijuana chocolate bar, which my wife immediately disagreed with me. So that evening, they finally released her from the hospital after a myriad of blood tests and found nothing. However, they did not do a marijuana test, as she could lose her job. Later that week, a friend of the family brought over a dollar store that test, and it came up positive. I still laugh just thinking about this story. Story 56. So, a week earlier, we found a dead body, strangely pretty common at hotels. The business guys eat crap and drink heavily because they are on the road so much. Airplanes don't help either. It freaked a bunch of the housekeepers out to walk in and find a guy dead, in bed. It was hours past his checkout time. It must have happened while he was sleeping. Anyway, the following week, they played a joke on me and took a bunch of towels and pillows and stuffed it in a bed. Looked exactly like a human under the covers, and they told me it was another cold one. They hooked up a walkie-talkie speaker, and when I got close to it, they screamed murder, so it blared. Scared the crap out of me. They got me good that day. Story 57. I walked in on a lady standing completely naked in front of the door with her kids after knocking several times and announcing myself before opening the door to do a light service. I quickly closed the door and went to the next room. Story 58? Not me, but my mom. She cleans houses and babysits for a living. It was a Monday, so she hadn't been to this client's home since Friday morning. Come Monday, she's vacuuming the master bedroom as usual. Next, she goes down to vacuum under the bed when she sees the client's dead cat. My mom screams and calls the family. The father of the family comes and takes care of the cat while keeping it out of sight from his wife. True story, bro. Story 59. My girlfriend and I were housekeepers for her dad's hotel for a year. And there's a bunch of crazy stories, but two sticks out. 1. New guy, renting a room, standing at the reception with a knife in hand, telling my girlfriend that he won't kill her since she was too pretty for that. 2. My girlfriend and I were out of town for the weekend, but had to cut our weekend short since one of the renters were going bat-crap crazy, threatening a bunch of other people at the hotel. We come back to the hotel and found the crazy renter locked in a bathroom yelling on what I assumed to be a telephone, since she occasionally yelled out a name and it sounded like she was responding to the person on the phone. I told her that the police was on their way and that she had to quit her crap. She opened the door, blood all over herself, and asking if I at least could help her find her phone first. Story 60. I worked in a very old, like over 300 years old hotel/restaurant in the UK. It was so old the hallways were crooked, and when you stood at one end of any long enough hallway, it would twist around like a fun house. The landlord told me to go and collect a fee from one of our guests who was staying with us for a while, a couple of weeks. I went up, knocked on his door, no answer, but the door was ajar. I called out his name and tentatively walked in. It looked like a murder scene, blood-soaked towels on the bed, a martini glass filled with needles, blood spatters on the wall and bed. I heard the guy walking down the hall and quickly got out before he came around the corner. Turns out he was an addict and used the hotel as a place to get high. Story 61. I was a second shift house attendant at a decently fancy hotel attached to a casino. This was one catered towards businessmen and high rollers. Well, one night I'm delivering chocolates to the VIPs. Basically, the important people get complimentary chocolate with their stay. One of the rooms was a suite, which is like a small apartment with a sort of hook shape. You walk in, there's an entry area that leads to a small dining area, and then it turns about 30 degrees into a living room type area, and then hooks again to the bedroom with the bathroom in the same view. I think you see where I'm going with this. Basically, I knock a few times and get no response, and since there's no do not disturb up, I head in and cautiously poke my head around. Good thing I did, because I see two dudes in the bathroom going at it. They have sex hard in that tub. So I freaked out a bit, leave the chocolate on a nearby table and dip the duck out. Story 62. Not a casino, but a regular hotel. It was a pet-friendly room, and some old couple brought their cat and large dog with them. They let the cat run all around the lobby and check in, which was weird, but okay. After they checked out, I get a text from my coworker to come look at the room. They had neglected to bring a litter box for the cat, so the best solution. Take a hotel towel, lay it on the closet floor, and dump the entire box of cat litter on top of it. The dog was also trained to use puppy pads, except he was about 100 pounds, and instead of cleaning it up each time the dog crapped, they just laid down a new one. Giant turds everywhere. They had only been there for 2 nights, but it was the most disgusting room I ever saw, and I worked in housekeeping for quite some time. Story 63. These are not only weird, but flat out nasty, so fair warning. At the hotel I worked, the workers had the option to live in the hotel. Unfortunately, some of our workers left the room a total mess after leaving. One guy that got fired for stealing literally left white power on his desk with a razor blade, some pipe, and the rest of the room was just nasty. It took 2 housekeepers and 2.5 hours. A different worker left his room pretty clean till I flipped the chair upside down and realized he had been picking his nose for months and putting the boogers under the seat. The nastiest thing ever was some drunk was too wasted and couldn't make it to the bathroom, so he tried throwing up, put the window, but we have screens. The entire screen was covered in vomit and took so long, and it was so nasty. Story 64. Worked in a fairly nice hotel and did some shifts in housekeeping. Certainly not the weirdest thing that someone had found. But I walked into a room to find the mattress stripped and pushed up against the French doors, ground floor. Then I found all of the bedding in the bathtub, but set up as if someone had slept in it, as in pillows at one end and duvet folded over, but soaking wet. I went to get one of the full-time housekeepers, and she helped me sort the room out. We then found a surprising amount of nail clippings piled up on the dresser. Definitely at least 3 pairs of hands worth. We asked the receptionist about who was staying there, and they said it was a dude on his own that stayed for one night. Story 65? It wasn't me, but a coworker. She came into a room and found that the tenant had decided to sprinkle a mix of ash and or salt on the carpet, then laid down trash bags on top of it all, placed candles in every corner, including the vanity, and left paper bags filled with random damaged toys and dolls, some of which were burnt, melted, or cut. Oh, and the candles didn't set the room on fire, but did damage and warp the wallpaper. The tenant had the gall to insist we had to let her stay in another room because she had too much luggage. She had 5 heavy double-strength black trash bags in lieu of luggage, and nowhere else to go. We told her she wasn't welcome and to get out. Yes, we had to renovate the room due to the extensive damage she caused to the carpet and wallpaper. Story 66. Strangest? The morning after a threesome, 2 guys and a gal, getting room service. There was powder. They offered me some. I declined. They were all still in bed. This was at the Mondrian in Hollywood. Lots of celebrities and such. General debauchery and the like. Other highlights included Leonardo DiCaprio and his whole scene circa Titanic, which was basically real-life Entourage. He was always very cool, respectful, introduced himself, shook my hand, made sure I was well-tipped even if one of his crew signed for something, and on a totally separate occasion, delivering to Claudia Schiffer, who answered the door in a towel and saying, "Come on in." That was strange because she ordered French fries with mayonnaise. I guess it's a thing in Europe. Story 67, not a housekeeper. But when I was night manager, I'm waiting for the day manager to relieve me. I get a call from a housekeeper freaking out saying I need to come upstairs. I get to the room, and there is blood everywhere. It looked like a murder scene broken picture, lamps, blood sprayed on the walls. I told everyone to get out. I call the GM and the police. The GM tells us he'll take care of this. Never found out what happened in the room. I just know we charged the guest $5,000 cleaning fee. Weird thing is, we never got a noise complaint or anything during the night. I have a lot more random stories, finding a pound of WD under a bed. Random stuff. Story 68. Door kept locking on housekeeping. Worked as maintenance. Unlocked door with master that swings open the top latch as well as deadbolt once. Then got called back to do it again. Investigated room check. See hand under the bed slightly when I take one step into room. Leave. Lock door behind me again. Call police. They removed the person who was trying to hide under the bed after checking out. No follow-up. Just creepy. Don't know their intentions, etc. They may have just been having a giggle, trying to find somewhere to sleep and out of money. Not their room and scared, or some kind of incident, or some creepy abuser waiting for the next guest. No friggin' clue what they were trying to accomplish, but he looked genuinely creepy. Story 69. I'm currently housekeeping in a small town in Utah. This isn't too weird, but there were a lot of polygamists staying in our hotel and working at a local farm. Most of them had pictures/shrines with pictures of Warren Jeffs in their rooms. Gave me the chills for sure. Also, I walked in on a guy sprawled out naked sleeping. I don't know how he didn't hear me knock super loud and yell housekeeping, but he was sleeping like a baby. Story 70. I'm a former slot technician at a small casino. One time during one of the busiest times of the year, I saw a pair of underwear abandoned on the gaming floor. Just sitting there at the corner of a bank of slot machines. Everyone ignored it. Another time, an older woman got drunk drinking red wine. The bar refused to serve her, so her husband went and got the drinks for her. They started watering down the glasses of wine. Not long after that, the man and woman left. She pissed herself, and the chair she was on was soaked. Classy. Story 71. I was the one that was found by housekeeping. Passed out after a night of drinking on the strip, but was smart enough to take my clothes off and sleep in the bathtub to avoid having to clean vomit the next morning. Was woken up by housekeeping poking me with a broomstick and asking if I was alive. Forgot to put the do not disturb sign on my door. Story 72. Crabs everywhere. It was a hotel by the ocean and in a huge 4-bedroom, 2-level suite. People staying there took the time to put crabs everywhere. In the coffee pots, the toilet, the vases, the sinks, the dishes in the cupboard, etc. Most were tiny babies and still alive. We put them in buckets and took them back to the beach. But honestly, it was so weird. Story 73. I once worked a temp job at the Beverly Hilton in Beverly Hills. Had to regrout the bathtubs. I'm in a tub doing my work when my boss comes in and says, "Weird, right?" I say, "What's weird?" He says, "That's the run Whitney Houston died in." I jumped out. I said, "Wait, you guys replaced the tub, right?" He said, "Why would we replace the tub? We cleaned it, so yeah, was damn morbid." Story 74. Housekeeper at an old folks' home. A dude, like 90 years old at least, was wandering the halls at about midnight-ish when he was supposed to be in bed. I encountered him, and he told me with giant wandering eyes that I should get out now. "They're coming. Nothing lasts forever. The walls are closing. They're melting. You should go before it falls down." It was eerily calm and gave me spinal chills in the moment. I think he passed away a few nights after. Very sad. He was so sweet. Story 75. I worked housekeeping and front desk at a Marriott in my city. My very first day training in HK, my trainer and I went into our first room. There's a stack of Playboys on the bed, a $20 bill, and a note. The note asked whomever was cleaning his room to leave their underwear for the $20. According to the woman training me, that guy is a regular, and she started taking the money as in creeper tax. Story 76. How about a reverse story? I stayed at a hotel once, and when I opened my door, the housekeeper was in the room, cleaning stuff. Her 5-year-old son was sitting on the bed watching cartoons. She apologized, said she was done anyways, and her kid left the room. I then went into the bathroom and noticed a giant turd in the toilet. No TP in there, BTW, just the turd. I still have questions about that. Story 77. Used to work in the hotel department on a cruise ship. I would do turn-down service during dinner, meaning leaving small mints on pillows, taking out trash from the afternoon, general quick clean. I had an older woman, 80, 90, repeatedly walk out of the bathroom nude because she couldn't hear me knock on the door. I wish I thought she was feigning ignorance, but I think she was just confused often. Story 78. RV park had a guy passed away because he locked himself inside his RV. He didn't get help, so he tried to climb out of a window. He used a chair to prop himself up. He must have slipped and fell on his diaphragm. The EMTs were struggling to get him out, told him to climb through a window and push him out. Can't believe they didn't think of that. I didn't do it because, implications. Too many old people over here. Story 79. It was a hostel, but we found a homeless person who had somehow gotten into one of the beds and passed out for like 2 days. We still don't know how he did it, since the hostel and room wings both had unique keys. Also, same hostel. We once found the remnants of a party in one of the private rooms. Needles, some other unidentified fluids, and I think there was a bone of some sort. Story 80. It's not something I've walked into, but I was walking past a rooms and just hear extremely loud moaning, which there was loud construction going on at the time. Either some girl was getting it really good in there, or the Ahole was watching adult film too loud. He's in Ahole, BC. It took him forever to leave on the day he checked out and left the room a mess. Story 81. My aunt is a hotel manager. She had to deal with a situation where a guest left hundreds of empty Whippet bottles and feces all over the walls and bathroom. Apparently, the guest was extremely wealthy, and when they contacted the guest's lawyer, he just asked how much they wanted for the damage and paid it. Story 82. I work hotel security and we had a guest OD. They got revived by FD. I helped with the eviction and performed the damages check afterward. It was disgusting. It took the housekeeping director and me about 2 hours to clear. There was garbage and substances residue on just about everything. Then there were the needles. Tons of syringes, and most of the needles were broken or had snapped off. Story 83. I work in a really high-end hotel. One of the weird things about rich people is some of them grow up really out of touch and don't know very basic things. I had somebody once who, I guess somehow didn't understand that dishes are washed and used again, so they would just throw everything in the trash.